Johan, so 2012 is coming to a close, and as we're approaching the end of the year and the new year, what would you say have been the highlights of this year?
For the Resilience Centre, scientifically, 2012 has been a very exciting and interesting year. We have continued to advance our research on understanding complex socio-ecological regime shifts, ranging from, I would call it, a scientific breakthrough in understanding the relationship between sea fish stock populations and seabirds, understanding that there are thresholds also in the amount of fish in the oceans, all the way to the dynamics of hydrology, stewardship of ecosystems linked to different types of tipping points, supporting the policy work in the Baltic Sea with regards to understanding eutrophication, fishing, and also climate change. So always looking at the integrated perspectives on the risks of abrupt change. We're also leading the Arctic Resilience Assessment, which is the first effort of taking a resilience framework and understanding the risks of abrupt changes in the Arctic, but also what are the sources for wise stewardship, the sources of resilience. So these are examples of major advancements in our work. We've tried to synthesize that in a number of deeper insights, drawing lessons from our past 5 years of research, which are also coming up with interesting work from adaptive governance all the way to understanding the big global dynamics. We've also put a big effort in 2012 to try and communicate this science to the world. 2012 was, after all, the meeting of the United Nations in Rio, 20 years after the 92 conference, 40 years after Stockholm, where we hosted a major science policy event with Nobel laureates, trying to communicate and synthesize our research showing the need to reconnect to the biosphere. And taking that also into the UN process on biodiversity and the City Biodiversity Outlook report, which was the first effort of really synthesizing the role of biodiversity for sustainable cities development in the world. So a year of multiple science, policy, but also business interactions. We've had several interactions with the World Business Council for Sustainable Development, where we signed a collaborative science business agreement just a couple of months back. So trying really to push not only the science agenda, but also our science policy, science business experimentation.
Wow, what a year. But would you say there were any disappointments?
Well, on the world stage, 2012 will most likely go to the history of a year where the Earth system for the first time sends a signal of very abrupt change, which is of course the third year in a row low in terms of ice extent in the Arctic, which is the first signal that resilience theory holds also at the Earth system scale, that we can go through long periods of very slow change and then suddenly go into periods of abrupt change. That was then linked to the disappointments in some of the global negotiations, for example in Doha on the climate negotiations, where of course we had hoped for a more integrated perspective and understanding how the biosphere interacts with the climate system and therefore requires an even more active policy and politics in the world and a joint governance effort to try and really move towards a low carbon future. But this we didn't see. But on the other hand, in that disappointment, I think there's also growing realization of the risks we're facing, and also growing discourse and dialogue around resilience thinking, all the way from editorials in the New York Times to the way business leaders now talk more and more. One should recognize that the World Economic Forum next year has as its topic resilient dynamism in the world. The Ban Ki-moon high-level panel report for the Rio conference was about resilient people, resilient planet. So I think we're starting to realize that it's not only about reducing environmental impacts, it's about building societies with a redundancy, flexibility to deal with change and surprise. So you could say that the disappointments of how the world is developing in a deep recession, financial crisis, growing disparities between countries, but also growing environmental risks, is also counterbalanced by growing insights that things now require new thinking, which I think is in a way means that the kind of total balance sheet for 2012 is quite positive.
So it's a learning process.
Definitely a learning process.
Yeah. And with that in mind, where do we go now? What's in the pipeline? What exciting things do we have to look forward to for 2013?
Well, apart from all the good research we're doing across our 6 themes, which For example, in 2013, I foresee will ramp up even more the links between governance, economics, and global change, because we've received quite a lot of scientific support to connect the economics of global change with governance and understanding interactions among planetary boundaries, for example. We will certainly see more research in our marine area, in our urban area, in our agricultural area. So there's a lot of interesting science going on. 1st of January 2013 will also be the birth of Future Earth, which is a major endeavor of integrating the global environmental change research programs in the world, a process that we have contributed very significantly to the design phase of. 2013 will also be a year where I hope we'll get our science even more connected to the United Nations work of moving from Millennium Development Goals to Sustainable Development Goals. We have hosted what we in 2012 called the Quito Dialogue on financing mechanisms for ecosystem services. In second half of 2013, we'll do a Quito equivalent in Colombia together with the Colombian government on the science for sustainable development goals, which I think will be really relevant. So there's a lot in the pipeline also for 2013.